One, 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 two, three.
All right, this is the official start time. Thank you, Lars. Given the timing of breakfast, I suspect we'll have a wave of people come in 15 minutes or so. Everyone in the room knows each other. I think we've all been introduced, but people might be watching the recording later. So a real quick round of introductions for the people that are part of the LLC Tools team, at least. I'm Robert Sparks. I'm the Director of IT for the LLC, and I am stationed in the Central Time Zone in Dallas, Texas area.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Richards. I'm a senior software developer with the LLC, and I'm located in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
Yeah, I'm Rudi Matz, or Rüdiger, originally from Germany, now based in Montreal, and a senior software developer.
Hi, I'm Kesa Ratnayaka, a senior software developer working for LLC. I'm based in Wellington, Aotearoa, New Zealand.
I'm Matt Holloway, and yeah, I'm from Wellington, New Zealand, Aotearoa as well. And yeah, I'm a senior software developer like Niels.
All right, we're also expecting Nick Giard, but I suspect there's public transportation in the way. So, all right, this is a session at IETF 124. We are operating under the note well. People should, if you're not familiar with the note well, familiarize yourself with it. It has important ramifications for what it means to participate in one of these sessions. Counting to 60 to give people an opportunity. All right. Welcome, Jay. So I can go through this fairly quickly given who I'm seeing in the room. The Tools team holds monthly calls as interims using Medico. We use notes in the HedgeDoc tool to build an agenda and capture details about the projects that we're working on. There is a version of those notes at the link under the second bullet. I encourage people in the meeting to browse to that notes page and add to it during the meeting. We don't need your names. Usually we ask for sign in there. We're going to let the Medico sign in take care of that this session. We keep our projects at the IETF Tools organization at GitHub. As usual, issues and PRs are welcome at any time. Suggestions for new projects are welcome. As much community engagement as we can get in the development, we want. Our primary discussion list is toolsdiscuss@ietf.org, but we also have a tools help at ietf.org list that does not have a public archive. Tools Discuss is, of course, a publicly archived list. Tools help is available if you've got operational issues like problems changing passwords or something along these lines that you don't want to have discussed on a public list. We've had a desk at the IETF meeting this week. We'll have desks going forward. This particular meeting is unusual in that we have the entire team here, and we took advantage of several members living locally to bring everyone together for a week of high bandwidth communication with each other and with the community. So be sure to come by if you haven't. One of the things that's going on is the beta of the upcoming RFC editor website. You can browse that at any time on your own machines during the week, but I also encourage you to come interact with it while you have a member of the RPC with you. The questions and interactions, it allows the RPC to learn a lot more about how people are exploring what they're finding important, and they can discuss some of the design decisions that have been made. Go ahead.
Lars, I have a question. So I looked at the site and I wasn't quite sure what level of feedback you were looking for at the moment. Should I like complain about styling, or is it functionality, or is it?
Feel free to complain about anything.
Okay, great.
So questioning the design is fine. We did go through a professional design organization to get the basic layout and all of this stuff. But if you have, decisions that suggestions you would like to make about basic styling, that's no problem. If there are functionality issues and it's not out, if something looks missing and you don't see an obvious to-do or an issue already in the WW, I guess it's red beta repo, open more issues, it's easy to close them or just explain what's going on.
That's right. So like any other random IETFer, I believe I can do this way better than the professionals can. And I'm going to send you feedback and you can fully ignore it.
All right.
Thank you.
Can I add to that, Robert? So yeah, the last bit about fully ignoring it, this is different from any other IETF app in that this one is designed for consumers of RFCs, and
that doesn't stop me from sending you.
No, it doesn't stop you. No,
I'm
very pleased for you to do that.
Yeah, I'm not the target audience.
No, I understand that. But so that could mean that this one actually has a vision behind it, a design behind it for the consumers of RFCs. So I imagine there will be plenty of things that IETF participants ask for that the answer will be no, on this one.
And the last bullet on this slide was to remind people that between the last meeting and this one, the tools team formally moved its administrative connections to the IETF LLC instead of being a general area team. All right, over this last year, it's been an incredibly busy 2 years. This last year has had a large number of activities, many of which are hard to see unless you're down in them. A large number of them were infrastructure change related. We've improved our cloud system quite a bit. We've been working towards making the applications something that work more from the edge instead of from a single or set of boxes in the middle. That has involved a lot of architectural work to make sure that we have, for instance, a place where we keep drafts and RFCs and slides and minutes and all of these things that can distribute to the edge quickly. So we've went through a second transition of cloud providers, discovered that we could get quite a bit more control over our deployment environment and access to some faster hardware by moving things into Azure. When we made that move into Azure, our downtime compared to other downtimes was relatively small. We're not expecting that we will make any future large transitions like that, but we remain ready to should something happen that would cause us to need to move things out of Azure. We keep, at the moment, the DigitalOcean environment ready to swap into quickly in case of major failure or some other need to move across. We had security audits of the data tracker and the new, did I hear a question? It was just me. And the new cloud infrastructure, things got much more echoey. we've addressed the issues discovered during that security audit. The ones that were small and finite and could be addressed by a reasonable change in code. But there are some things that we'll be talking about later today related to the kind of applications we make available to the community and the ramifications of what we need to do to provide these applications a little more safely than we provide them currently. We diversified our session recording availability. As session recordings are pushed up now, they are pushed both to YouTube and Cloudflare Stream. The Medico player will let you choose which of those streaming providers you're playing back out of. We're also archiving all of the recordings now directly and immediately into offline storage as they're uploaded. So now for the last 4 months, starting just a little bit before the Madrid meeting, we have been focusing heavily, and by heavily I mean close to exclusively, on the RPC modernization projects, the RSC editor website, the replacement of the RPC workflow tooling, and building the new tool chain for the editors to work, with the ultimate goal of moving off of the current centralized Unix system where people are all editing together in one directory into more of a distributed editing environment with source control, a workflow system that is capturing the current state in a more naturally visible fashion, both for the RPC and the community, the end goal. We expect to have the first version of all of these systems in production before we get to the IETF 125 meeting. So I'm hoping that this happens weeks before that meeting, not days. So we'll see what we get to. While we've been doing this, we have continued to work on the data tracker, the IETF website, all of the other major projects, XML, RFC, but at a significantly reduced velocity. You can look at the release tabs for each of the major projects, or into the notes. There's a little bit of a summary of the releases over that last year. You can see that still quite a lot of work is happening, but not the volume that people were used to from a few years earlier. We do expect that we will return to that higher volume of velocity as this RPC, the first version of this RPC tools modernization suite goes online. All right. I touched on some of this stuff. The things that we're really focusing on right now are that RPC modernization, racing RFC 10K being in place for that well by March. The ability to create an RFC 10K document in terms of just editing the XML is well in hand. I believe we don't have anything else to do. It's ready to go. But the editing support tools that check RFCs, that inside some scripts that will help the RPC in their workflow still need to be touched, and the core database and the public facing applications like the current website are not. And that's what we're replacing and racing. I mentioned the refactoring for scalability. We're moving the artifacts into blob storage. You might have noticed that this week you haven't been getting Cloudflare managed challenges for meeting materials because they're being served from the edge. The there's a large bit of machinery that has been added. We now have a blob database that's kept with the origin, some asynchronous tools that provide information from the blob database at the origin to blob storage at edges. At the moment, that's R2 and Cloudflare, and workers that take advantage of the local blob storage to serve the content directly to the browser without bothering the origin when they can, and using minimal APIs to do things like when someone walks up and asks for an unversioned agenda, learning which agenda they should serve as current right now, and then taking it out of that local blob store and handing it to them. Service time for these things is very fast. The load on the server at this meeting for serving materials is much closer to zero than they were for the meeting in Madrid. We have, despite the description I gave earlier about the lower velocity on the rest of the applications, we have been responding to issues and feature requests from the community. We've been making progress on IESG dashboards. There are a few that have been asked for that are pretty stymied because the data tracker is just missing data. There's conversations on IETF tools about that, notably past roles. We've been working out a specification for the new liaison tooling, and then we've been working on updates to controlling email sent when balloting, issuing last calls, and calls for adoption. We've got a large number of things that have been identified that we know we need to do. There's a short list here that is exemplary of the kinds of things that are in this bucket. The bucket is much larger than this. They are projects of the size of replacing an entire application in the data tracker, dealing with, working with integration of the data tracker in Mailman 3 so that we have a much more integrated experience, can hide some of the idiosyncrasies of Mailman 3's Postorius interface from the IETF, RETF, RFC editor Mailman users, giving them a better control over the lists just from the data tracker. All of these have beginnings of specifications and sometimes deep and complete specifications. They're just waiting for us to get to them, and we expect to get to them as the RPC modernization project winds down. We've been frustrated for some time on providing visibility into the scope of these things and when we think we might start and complete them. We're going through an exercise at the moment, exploring additional resources to move towards the next stage in practices around project management so that we can have stronger estimates than we've had to date on these things and better reporting for where we are in developing them. So I got 3 discussion topics that I had hoped to go through during the meeting today. We're on time, so we've got about 15 minutes that we could spend on each of these, plus or minus, adjust as we need. And there will be time, hopefully, at the end for open mic for other things to discuss as well. So these are providing visibility, as I just mentioned, using JavaScript in the tools that we're providing, particularly the web tooling and the larger things that the security review found that we haven't addressed yet. So for these upcoming projects, one of the things we want to do is make sure, as we're changing how we talk about what we're going to work on and are gathering the feedback from the community on what we're going to work on, that we're answering the right questions. So these are the questions that we've captured. When is my new feature X that I've added as an issue scheduled to be worked on? When is that going to start? When is it going to deploy? how can the community see that the tools team work is following the community's priorities? And where is the broad project plan that shows all of the moving parts and how they're scheduled? Are there other questions that we should use when building a new system that would help us interact with the community? Nobody's jumping to the mic. All right. So what we're planning to do at the moment is to work towards having a more formal prioritization and estimation process. Whoop. Okay, Jim, go ahead.
Sorry, a little slow finding the button. Following community priorities, that assumes that there is some definition of what the community priorities are. I'm not even sure. I'm not sure that you can figure out how you're following community priorities when it isn't entirely clear what they are, or is it someplace that I don't know about?
At the moment, it is in the issues that have been provided and in the discussions that have happened during the tools calls when the community, and of course, the discussions on the tools discuss list. Now, it's pretty clear that for example, that there is a part of the community that would like us to move more quickly on BibXML than we're working on, right? That's and questions about when is that work going to start. Yeah, so that is an instance of priority. So one of the outputs, though, I think that you may be pointing to of a new process that we create is some sort of indication of the community sense of urgency for different things, and plus or minus maybe the community's satisfaction or dissatisfaction with the current thing.
I was nodding for people that aren't here. Yes.
Yep. All right. Well, back into this, how we're considering responding. We're evaluating how we can apply additional resources. I suspect that when we get to the end of this, we'll identify that we need more FOO. Some of the FOO that we're looking at right now is additional hands and thinking around building the next generation of a project management system. So, as always, we strive to increase transparency. We're using meetings like this one. I like when we get to the end of this meeting to get feedback from people that are here on whether having more of these as side meetings at the in-person meetings is the right thing to do. Or if you have any ideas beyond the interim meeting style for getting more frequent and deeper engagement. So, and we're also looking at just some basic toolings. Right? One of the tools that we're looking at right now is ZenHub, which is a thing that lives on the top of GitHub without modifying it to provide something that is somewhere along the path from nothing to the heavyweight tools like Jira. So I thought I saw somebody reaching. Jean, you were reaching for a mic.
There was a question in the chat about can people like upvote, downvote issues in GitHub, and I'm not seeing it. And also there are so many repos. I think it would be difficult even if you had the per issue voting. How would you compare and contrast against various projects?
Okay, so my apologies. I had not been watching the chat. I'll back up a little bit for Pete. There isn't an up-down vote feature now. As Nick noted, we had explored such a thing and did not find something that worked well. Yeah, as Rich noted, the current mechanic is to just add text. So, all right. The next quick topic I'd like to get into and get feedback on is that we are moving towards using frameworks that leverage the browser much more for our web-facing tooling. Red, the new RSC editor website, has a framework that has a tiered rendering. The origin provides data, a edge process or near to the edge process provides server-side rendering, and then the browser can tailor the output based on API input. This gives us the ability to provide content to automated systems at scale and customize the presentation or the interaction with the application to the end user based on their login or activities that they are performing inside the application. This is working out very well for Red, the proof of concept that we're seeing, and we've got earlier versions of it in other applications. The agenda page and the data tracker was a step in this direction. We are planning to take more of the applications down this path. One of the things that this is going to mean is that the average user is going to need to be running JavaScript in their browser to do interactive things. If you're a chair and you're logged in and you're punching buttons, JavaScript in the browser is likely to get involved in the future. It already is in many views, but not all. The feedback that we've been getting from the community for the last several years is that most of the community is begrudgingly okay with this. It's either ecstatically okay with it or begrudgingly okay with it. But we expect that there are going to be still some people that will be surprised and won't notice until suddenly something stops working for them until they turn JavaScript back on. And we've had some conversations at previous meetings about what we can do to help raise awareness so that that surprise comes earlier rather than later. And to get more feedback from people who come to meetings like this about whether or not this is actually the right thing to be doing. So, a notable change, and one that you can use when thinking about this, is that the applications really do need to phone home when they break, when there's a crash in the JavaScript code or an error that the JavaScript code needs to log. When running in the browser, it needs to get back to us. And gathering this kind of telemetry in the past has made some of the privacy sensitive members of the community quite itchy. But I think the landscape and visibility into the landscape has changed enough that the shape of and expectations around what we're capturing is better understood and will, I hope, be acceptable. Anyone have any thoughts?
I guess I distinguish a lot between analytics that are captured locally, maybe from weblogs and things like that. There's some tools for doing that, as compared with using a service like Google Analytics or so forth, where a third party is likely to be able to glean other information that perhaps we don't want to share. So,
Right.
if it's a local thing, I'm just speaking personally from a privacy standpoint. If it's a local thing, I'm happy. If it's a centralized analytics provider that gets the data, I'm less comfortable.
Understood. And our intent is to use entirely self-hosted services.
Yay.
So the details of that right now is we're using a self-hosted Grafana universe to capture and introspect and alarm on these things, and stack software that's entirely under our control, things like Tempo for the Django projects, essentially open telemetry frameworks from the origin, edge, and browser to feed information into that Grafana instance.
Robert, has there been analysis of if people are accessing the sites with really old browsers? How much old browser usage is there? And is it going to affect their ability to use the sites if they're using old browsers?
We have some visibility through the Matomo analytics tool that we have, a little bit of visibility with what we can see from user agent fields when they're reported accurately in the traffic that comes through Cloudflare. We're watching as we go to see where the edge of implementation required for the application is. We can be making different decisions based on the target audience of the applications. For the externally facing Red RSC editor website, for instance, right now, the application requires a moderately modern browser. For example, we had some Chromebooks here that had an old enough version of Chrome on them that the current experience with Red was not what was expected. But the application by application, we can look at what the non-JS feedback things should look like. Content to RSCs is still not what's the word? Browser dependent is not quite the right word. Very old browsers can look at the RFCs themselves. It's the navigation, the search, the info pages, and things like this nature that very old browsers aren't rendering well. So the shorter answer to the question is analysis is possible. We don't have like captured finished analysis on these things per projects. It's just an activity that needs to be continually performed. All right. The security review of the data tracker and the new cloud infrastructure showed up order of tens of issues to address, where we had simple things like a form that could be convinced to do something that we didn't expect by having some stray input. We were able to address all of these fairly quickly. The one that we haven't really addressed was they pointed out that we have a large number of applications that run, as I write here, essentially run over arbitrary input from anonymous users. And the author tools in particular runs several pieces of software, cram down, XML RFC, the IDNets, BAP, a lot of these programs that are really useful to the community, but they are complicated systems, XML to RFC in particular, with its ability to include from the XML, is capable of reaching things that you might not want it to reach. In the security review, they showed us that, well, XML to RFC running at the data tracker could include things from API endpoints inside of our cluster. We went through a round of changing the visibility of things inside our running cluster so that it can't, but it points out that, there is the possibility that somebody could feed something into XML to RFC that would tie up that thread for essentially forever. We need to work on stronger sandboxing of the resources for applications like this, so they are bounded in their use of threads, memory, and ability to reach other things. What can they reach from a file system perspective? What can they affect from a file system perspective, or any other data store perspective? So over the next few months, I'd like to have more conversations with the community while we're looking internally at what we can do about how much should we provide. So some examples of the conversations that are ongoing that are related to this are, should we continue to provide at the data tracker an automatic PowerPoint to PDF converter? So we're hearing from a large number of people, no, there are reasons that people should be making their own PDF anyhow, because that automatic PDF converter sometimes makes mistakes that people don't catch until far too late. And then we've got the motivation that, well, we're running a piece of software over arbitrary arbitrary PPT, and somebody could find a way to subvert that and make it do something insane. When we, yes, look, PowerPoint, I did my own PDF conversion here, and I missed that it missed the arrow for PowerPoint to PDF. So having people do their own PDF conversion isn't necessarily going to solve all of the missed conversion problems.
I thought that was a subtle commentary on the issue.
Yeah. So at the data tracker, we also know that we need to get to a point where when someone is providing XML to go into the repository, that it is fully self-contained. To do this, there needs to be tooling to help people that have documents in an authoring format that convenient. Not just convenience, it's just necessary to use includes to assemble the document. There needs to be tooling to let them get a fully complete document without creating a great deal of friction in maintaining the separated use of include version of the authoring document that they're using. So this is a process that we're going to need to figure out, and the tooling that would create this fully included thing will be doing these includes, so it's going to be another thing that needs to be sandboxed. Once that is sandboxed, the submission tooling becomes a lot easier. We know we would have something that's a lot safer to run XML to RFC on at the data tracker side. So I'll say a lot safer. I didn't say safe. So, all right. Anybody have any input on this?
I guess I'm the noisy one today. We're using, and we need to use, a lot of upstream external tools. Do we have anything in place that help, to understand what all of our dependencies are and to monitor security alerts from all those dependencies.
So we're using Dependabot at GitHub on all of the projects. Some of the projects have additional dependency managers that give us alerts. So we have, just as part of our regular weekly process, people are looking at each of the projects on what these alerts are and determining which ones are important and acting on them, and which ones can be safely not acted on. So go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, I just want to mention that Robert and the team did go out to a bunch of present company excluded security experts and asked for their feedback on what the team was planning to do based on the security audits, and they provided the audits and the responses. And it was pretty unanimous that, yeah, you're fixing the right things, those are easy, and there's some that are harder and can wait. So, congratulations to the team. You guys, I think, in my view, passed the audits with flying colors.
All right. So these were the questions that I wanted to go through. We have about 20 minutes left. Does anyone have other items they'd like to discuss?
I just wanted to mention for the roadmap piece that I agreed with someone who on the previous tools team call said they liked the roadmap, it just needed more information. So I'm okay with GitHub roadmap, it just needed a little more filling out and attention, I felt like.
So the reason Robert and I discussed having this as an open meeting at a meeting here to see if we could bring more people along. That clearly hasn't worked. We would love to hear your views on how we can get more community involvement in this. I mean, the reason we want that is because we want to make sure that we are, meeting people's priorities, that people are being heard about things. And that we have that there are some people in leadership who are concerned that we're not necessarily doing that. So if you have any views on how we might be able to get better involvement, and it doesn't need to be through a meeting, it could be through some other mechanism, please let us know.
Once you have the roadmap or similar up, every time someone complains about something small on tools discuss or working group chairs, always pointing them back to the issue, the big issue list. Thanks for your feedback on this tiny webpage. Take a look at our overall priorities. Like, just kind of, I mean, that's the primary interaction that you get with the community is people saying, what about this? What about this? Whether it's like really small stuff or my thing broke or whatever. And taking that opportunity each time, like, go look at the big priorities and see if you think this is the right thing. I also think that your speaking during working group chairs lunch is really valuable for people to know what's going on.
Having perhaps a regular part of the agenda in the working group chairs lunch. I mean, we're sometimes constrained for time, but even if it's just 5 minutes saying, or even putting a resource link on the tools page that points to what the current roadmap is, pull it out as a document. I know every meeting has the list of roadmap items, but just something that someone can read without any other context other than that I use the data tracker might be useful.
I think the extent to which the tools support the IETF process is something that a new participant would probably not understand very well. I don't know what we do for new participant training, like on Sunday and so forth, but is there something there that kind of introduces them to the tooling and, here's all of the stuff that we've got and, explore and all that sort of thing?
We do like a little bit about data tracker, a little bit about mail archive, some different bits of data tracker, and we do some XML to RFC things as well. Authors.itf.org. So we do those as services that people need to use, but not as like software tools that they can direct the development of. So that last bit might be something we could add, Jess.
When the Policy Fellows program was running in the past, there would at some meetings be a 45-minute to hour-long session that was a guided tour of the data tracker. It was basically people in the room following along, where I would just walk them through, here's how you find working groups, here's how you find the documents from this working group, here's how you find the liaison statements that might be related to this group. It was tailored towards the Policy Fellows at the time, but towards a newcomer,
well, I think some of that, like here's how you find the working groups and the documents and all of that in Data Tracker. At some level, I think new participants ought to be introduced to that, if we don't already.
Yep. So I think it's a good idea, but I also think new participants usually come already with some level of engagement. It's not that they're walking in the door because they saw like the sign outside and wondered what's the IETF. So we should like probably level set this. But since you talked about expectations in the community and tools, right? So I'd be surprised to learn that new participants are the source of many like change requests for tools. It's probably those of us who've been here for a long time and think that you all should just be working on our little pet peeves. And what's I think been helpful overall is talking about the roadmap and talking about the big things that are in flight to sort of nudge people to understanding that your little bug fix might need to wait because we need to like shift the databases around, and remind them that there's like like relatively serious IT work happening in the tools team to address a lot of technical debt, and that's why we have a bunch of developers, right? And that doesn't mean that it's not like you file a ticket and you get your bug fixed. There's a prioritization that's required, and maybe hammering on that a bit more, because some people should be used to that from their day job, right? If they maintain software, they have a similar process involved somewhere.
Yeah, I have a similar comment to what Lars said. So I'm mostly worried about the leadership not knowing how to use the data tracker. And we have all this. I'm mostly worried about the leadership not knowing how to use the data tracker, in particular the incoming leadership. And we have all this oral tradition between working group chairs. You have to press that button, not that button, and nobody knows why. But once we learn that's useful. So one problem here may be that there is a lot of documentation, and it's very unlikely that you can digest that in one sitting. So it would be good to have some access to new bits of information in the documentation and in a somewhat structured way. So you can do your monthly dose of data tracker updates at some point.
Well, I was hearing two things there, Karsten. There is the providing an on-ramp for new leadership, new working group chairs, new ADs, because there's a whole new chunk of the tooling that becomes available to them when they become ADs. And then there is the full community learning about changes. And maybe we should explore having a section of these monthly calls or a separate monthly call that is just focusing on a introduction of features and Q&A on just using the tooling, as opposed to talking about what the tooling development is. Not quite an ask me anything, but show up here today. We're going to talk about the working group state management part of the data tracker or something along these lines.
I'm not sure that this is the right meeting because how many working group chairs are in this room? So we would need to be the seeds to tell that to the other working group chairs.
Well, but become part of an EODR activity. So a separate meeting that the tools team would have to provide input into, if it would be useful. I don't know. Is that what kinds of activities would make the kind of onboarding you were pointing to easier for chairs, other than just the shared oral tradition version?
Well, the onboarding could be done with a basic set of documentation that is optimized towards the.
I'm sorry, I move a little closer to the mic for that last part again, please.
Yes. So the onboarding process could be helped by some documentation that is focused on the needs of a new working group chair or a new area director. Area directors probably get all the help they need. But the other thing is just the ongoing process of getting better in using these tools. And I think that there used to be a newsletter called Daily Dose of IETF, and maybe we don't need that, but some form of telling people, oh, by the way, this no longer breaks when you use it, so please go ahead and use it, and so on. That would be useful. Mostly pointers, not extensive discussion.
Okay. We have a few minutes left. Do anyone have any other topics? If not, we can break, catch the last of the breakfast. No, go ahead, Carsten.
Yeah, I don't want to be in the way of your breakfast, but I just want to point out that the lack of publication form PDF in the data tracker IDEA repository is creating problems again and again and again.
Yeah.
So it would be good to
So Carsten's particularly talking about the PDFized variant, where we take the HTMLized HTML and make a PDF of it. And he is particularly pointing to that we are doing this even for documents where we have PDF created from the RFC XML, and that at least for those documents, we should stop doing the PDFizing. We've had some previous conversations about stopping doing the PDFizing, period. And I'm hoping that that's where we can go and just not PDFize anything at all.
I hope so too, but with the caveat that we talked about modern browsers a couple of minutes ago, and print to PDF functionality in browsers is an evolving target.
People often use the PDF form for reviews, and they don't necessarily do these reviews in the browsers.
No, but I mean, if you print from the browser, you get a PDF. So one conversation we had, I think that's what Robert meant, right? If instead of having a button that says download a pre-rendered, server-side pre-rendered PDF, it would basically bring up the print dialog in your browser and says you print it from there.
Yes, but that's not the thing that is useful for reviews, because people are reviewing documents so they can be published as...
I can't hear you, sorry.
People are reviewing documents so they can be published as RFCs. So what they review should look like an RFC and not like a printout of a web page.
Correct.
Yeah.
Which is
So the point is that there are PDFs of those of the RFCs, right?
Of RFCs, but not of internet drafts.
So the PDFs are generated by taking the HTML and applying a print CSS. The browser can do this too. It doesn't need to be WYSIPRint that does it.
Well, this is true for the RFC XML, right? But what about the few internet drafts that we continue to have submitted, or the ones that are lying around that are actually still part of the process that are very old, for which we don't have the RFC XML?
Screw them. I'm not share anymore, so I can say this now.
If you've only provided the text format, you can, just, go beat on your submitter and to give them something other than the text format.
I think it's completely unreasonable in 2025 to accept anything other than Markdown or whatever, XML, right? We got to stop doing this. It is just like, it's nuts that we, because if we take them now, they're going to be with us for the next 5 years at least, right? So step one is to stop taking them in, and step two is like then to phase them out.
Okay. So what about when someone wants to do a BIS of, I'm just poking at the edges of this from answering the PDF question, right? Somebody wants to do a BIS of RSC 20. What is it that they're going to be reviewing when they're looking at RSC 20 instead of?
We need to make Karsten open source his text to Markdown tool finally, and then we can run that, and then they have a Markdown source.
But that tool goes from XML, so it doesn't help.
Okay. So, I mean, everybody, or lots of us have scripts for text to Markdown because we've all had that problem, or those of us who have biz old RFCs, and it's not that hard to get something that you then manually change, and it's fine.
Right.
So the big things are easy to auto convert. Maybe we just somebody needs to put some up for the tool seem to.
I think you've answered a different question. You've answered the author that's going to be doing the RSC 20 BIS. What about the reviewer that takes that finished RSC 20 BIS product and wants to compare it to the existing RSC 20 BIS? Do we need it to the existing RSC 20? Do we need a PDF of that RSC 20 that is HTMLized for, just HTML to HTML or PDF to PDF, right?
So I'd be surprised to learn that anybody's workflow when it comes to comparing BIS to non-BIS version involves PDF. It's usually you look at the ASCII rendering diff. At least, yeah.
It's ASCII diff. Yeah. Well, text diffs. Sorry, not ASCII disks. But all right. Well, I think we've reached the end of our time. Thank you very much for contributing to this. And if you have any further thoughts about what we can do to improve this kind of engagement in the future, please let us know.